Chapter 81. Tomb of the Wind Warrior, 5. Sponsored content. The great orc warrior, flailing in pain, would be greatly enraged that I, a human that was surely prey, could injure it to such a degree. Through eye of perception, I could feel it, a predator's rage. And I could tell. That rage is directed solely at me. Its blazing eyes were glaring at me over the distance I had put between us. But because of the pain, it wasn't able to do anything other than stare. So it will choose. The great orc warrior was an extremely strong monster. It also possessed considerable prowess in throwing its weapon. The throw would have very high accuracy in addition to great destructive force. To throw the axe at me. And with a great deal of strength. In order to tear me, and me alone, to pieces, it would use every ounce of its strength. Because those crimson red eyes saw nothing other than me. It's moving. The great orc warrior was definitely stronger than me. If I took a direct hit, a single blow might kill me. But that wasn't relevant until it happened. I'd be a fool to get hit even though I know it's coming. I knew the attack was coming, and had even clearly perceived the speed and trajectory of that attack. Of course I wouldn't sit around to get hit by it. I had long since mentally prepared myself to dodge. I looked carefully, focusing. The moment it hurled its axe, it would reveal an opening. Sure enough. Squeaal. The great orc warrior gave a guttural scream as it threw its axe at me. Whumph whumph. The axe rotated fiercely in the air as it hurtled my way, so fast that it was no exaggeration to say it truly hurtled. From the very sound it made in the air, I could feel it. Massive destructive force. The attack was filled with insane power and was so fast it would have been difficult to dodge had I not predicted it in advance. But unfortunately for the orc, both Sunhwa and I had expected it. Sunhwa was standing right next to me to prepare for potential danger, but even our little tank couldn't take that axe straight on. In a situation as dangerous as this, what she could do was limited to slightly changing its trajectory. That is Sunhwa's role. As commendable as it was, Sunhwa was well aware of her own role and was prepared to do her job. I turned slightly aside and dodged the axe. Bam! The axe buried itself into the ground. Having failed to land the hit, the great orc warrior shrieked in even greater agitation. And then, I spoke. Now. Now was our chance, while the great orc warrior's mind was solely concentrated on me. Sponsored content. The really scary attack is the one you don't know about. Even if the attacks were the same, getting hit by one you knew about was different from one that blindsided you. Right now, right here, Sung Ji-yu and Sung Hyun's attack could be called an unexpected attack to the great orc warrior. I'm sure they've practiced well for this. I made them practice matching their breathing, and it was all for this moment. From their lips came a unique language I couldn't understand, an incantation. Fimo Haritanaya. Wedo la lavaka ta. A flame flickered to life in Sung Gu's palm, then became fierce flames that formed a whip. It was an ability that Sung Ji-yu had used a lot in the past as well. Flame whip. The flame whip he was showing now was pathetic compared to when he was a hero of Korea, but for the beginner period, it couldn't be any more magnificent. The next moment, that flame whip was covered by blue wind. They're doing well. Even though they were coordinating today for the first time, they were performing much better than I expected. The flame whip flew taut and straight at the great orc warrior like an open-mouthed snake. Sung Hyun is providing good support. If Sung Ji-yu was handling the destructive force, then Sung Hyun was fueling the flames and handling the precision. The two of them were covering each other's inadequacies. This is probably the first magic fusion shown since the Cataclysm. These two certain geniuses were managing their first magic fusion quite well. I knew they would do well. After all, the two of them were a famous combo to begin with. Even though they usually looked like two archenemies itching to have at it, as soon as they went into a raid, they showed off a partnership that was as harmonious as peanut butter and jelly. The way their personalities and classes matched up was unequaled. The flame whip wrapped in wind went straight into the orc's mouth. Yoo-hyun balled his fist, yelling a triumphant, nice. The flames blazed within the great orc warrior's mouth. Sweat poured from Sung Gu's forehead. This goddamn bastard, it's resilient as all hell. He was using up all his mana to continue feeding the flames. Die, you goddamn bastard. This was the climax I directed, the great orc warrior blazing like a torch. And the iron sword I put in there earlier. The iron sword, penetrating its mouth, would become molten iron that would melt the great orc warrior from the inside, running down its esophagus to turn all of its insides to mush. Squeaal. The great orc warrior flopped onto the ground. This play was coming to completion. Yunseo, Yuhyun. Yunseo and Yuhyun, our close combat fighters, stepped up. Yunseo used her movement skill, Heavenly Demonic Flying Step, to approach first. So that they could coordinate, she told Yuhyun what technique she would be using and where. Single hit finisher, back of head. More precisely, the hole I'd left in the back of the Great Orc Warrior's head. Yuhyun followed, barking out the name of his finisher. It wasn't really necessary, but he still said the skill name out loud. It was probably a habit he'd gained from coordinating with Yunseo. Hammer Fist. Sponsored content. Yuhyun followed up Yunseo's single-hit finisher with his Hammer Fist on the back of the collapsed and frothing at the mouth Great Orc Warrior's head. Boom. The sound that shook the air was almost like an explosion, though it of course fell far short of the fist I remembered from the Fist King So Yuhyun. Great Orc Warrior has been killed. EXP acquired. 52 coins acquired. Perfect. It didn't count as a direct hunt. I did deal some damage and directed the hunt like a sovereign, but it was still calculated as me doing less than 50% damage. I think the coins were given to me, the party leader. I just had to distribute them later. The Observer class seemed better than I first thought. If controlled well, I wouldn't need to worry too much about losing experiment. Hunt all the orc species monsters has been cleared. In addition to what the herdsman of Las Vegas proposed, we cleared the gamble of a quest issued by the Whispering Devil and Courageous Lion King. A gamble wasn't a gamble for nothing. It was high risk, high return. The first proposal of the herdsman of Las Vegas is still valid. Distributing rewards to all players who participated. The rewards being currently distributed are from clearing, secret within the Tomb of the Wind Warrior. The rewards distribution proceeded in order. Right now, I couldn't even feel the throbbing from my broken wrist. The rewards were just that sweet. The rewards this time. No rewards I'd gotten before could even compare. A stream of rewards as massive as what Michelle must have gotten in the past came in, dazzling my eyes. 100,000 coins acquired. Great Orc Warrior's gloves acquired. U-Plex Dungeon first entry rights acquired. Those were the rewards from the quest proposed by the herdsman of Las Vegas. Calculating an additional reward. 50,000 coins acquired. It didn't feel like a lot because I had just gotten 100,000 coins, but frankly, 50,000 coins alone was a massive amount. We got a measly 50 coins from hunting the Great Orc Warrior. Considering that, I had just gotten a huge pile of coins. Sponsored content. Is it over? It wasn't. Receiving a secret reward. Secret reward? This must be the reward from the quest proposed by the Whispering Devil or Courageous Lion King. Of the two of them, the Whispering Devil was more likely to hatch such a scheme. High Orc Spell Scroll acquired. Apparently, only I got this reward. The others didn't seem to know about it. The Whispering Devil gave this to me, huh? I could clearly see what the Whispering Devil was thinking. He was definitely an interesting bastard. By sending me this, it meant the Whispering Devil had, like me, already predicted what exactly would happen. This is gonna be fun. Our resident two-faced swords, whoa, man, Shin Yunseo, became a lively young woman in her early 20s after sheathing her sword. She jumped with joy, her face as red as an apple, showing that she was extremely pleased with what she got. Wow, I got an agility potion. Yuhyun got a strength potion, while Sunghyun and Sung Ji-yu each got elemental affinity potions. Everyone seemed to have gotten an item that suited them. As long as you could successfully win a gamble, it would indeed yield plentiful rewards. Damn, hey, you saw that, right? I was super strong, no? Jo Sunghyun, you were just like a pedestal for my greatness, you hear? I did it all, you just assisted. You haha. Sung Ji-yu was busy putting on airs in front of Sunghyun. Shabam, you saw it, right? My flame whip was super awesome. You admit it, right? Yeah, of course you do. Admit it again? Right, gotcha, woo, I must be really fucking strong. Right? Ah, yes, you're very strong, said Sunghyun in a flat voice. Everyone was excited from killing the Great Orc Warrior. Sunghyun was comparatively chill, and his eyes were saying, okay, you bark all you want. I'm gonna check my rewards, which made me feel like I was almost looking at the future Sunghyun and Sung Ji-yu. So they were like this from their beginner days, too. The young Sunghyun just answered, ah, yes, but later, he would bicker and quarrel with Sung Ji-yu. But well, they could afford to enjoy this leisure right now. As she watched Sung Ji-yu puff out his chest, Sunhwa muttered, looking somewhat displeased, it was all thanks to my oppa, okay? Summary. Slight brother complex. Sponsored content. Oppa did it all, okay? I decided to ignore her summary. I acted like I didn't hear her. Maybe she was acting like this because of puberty. Thankfully, the others didn't hear her because she spoke so quietly. Once the rewards calculation was finished, Guardian notices came in. The nameless observer continues to observe. Like always, the nameless observer continued their endless observation. Guardians like the Lady of the Scales, true master of the heavenly demonic mountain, or Giant of the Sunset didn't send me messages, most likely because they were focusing on their favorites. The herdsman of Las Vegas is happy. The host of this quest, the herdsman of Las Vegas, also enjoyed the amusement. Up to this point, I heard 2 notices. Notices from the others aside, I was waiting for a notice from a certain someone. You're gonna send a notice too. The Whispering Devil sent me a high orc spell scroll. That meant he'd already seen something brewing among the Guardians. He went out of his way to send me this as a secret reward. When are you gonna send it? I waited patiently. He would definitely send me a notice, most likely before this flashgate was completely cleared and we were sent outside. I spoke up. I think we've eliminated all the dangerous elements, but we need to look around. The condition to completely clear this place was to find the secret within the tomb of the Wind Warrior. It wouldn't be hard. Eye of Perception didn't pick up anything dangerous, either. There was probably a clear crystal somewhere inside the tomb. So that meant we'd cleared this place without a hitch. Everyone understood my words and moved towards the tombs. Yes. Yep. Okay. Understood. Got it, hung. And then, I heard some notices. I've been waiting. They were the notices I had predicted. Chapter 82. Tomb of the Wind Warrior, 6. Sponsored content. The ruler of the plains burns with hostility towards you. The ruler of the plains detests you. The ruler of the plains has reached the limit of their patience. In the past, when I hunted the thin hobgoblin, the ruler of the plains sent me a message saying that he disliked me. I can't be respected and chosen by every guardian. I was producing content that would suit the tastes of the majority of guardians, but I was well aware that I couldn't cater to the small portion of guardians who had unique tastes. They must have been focusing on me ever since I killed the thin hobgoblin. The ruler of the plains could be considered a guardian who had a greater fondness for monsters than for players. There was an extremely famous incident in the past where the ruler of the plains caused trouble to Yuhyun. I'll discard the ruler of the plains here. The Whispering Devil already knew that the ruler of the plains would direct their gaze of hatred towards me. That was why he sent me the high orc spell scroll as a secret reward. I saw in my mind's eye how things would play out. The Whispering Devil, the ruler of the plains, and me. What kind of scenario would occur with all 3 of us involved in one place? That'll be fun. I wasn't scared. Within 5 years, the ruler of the plains would disappear. I didn't know what kind of mechanism was behind the appearance and disappearance of guardians, but it was known that no players had heard notices from the ruler of the plains in 5 years' time. Alright, come at me, then. Right now, they wouldn't be able to try anything to get revenge. I made a legal play. It was just that the ruler of the plains didn't like that play. They won't be able to do anything right now, at least because the other guardians might notice. But one day, they would move against me. For sure. Aiming for my weakness. A sudden attack was scary, but one I already knew about wasn't. It could be blocked. Just then, Sunhwa shouted. Oppa. Holding something in her right hand, Sunhwa smiled brightly. I found it. A crystal glowing with a purple light was in her hand. She's smiling really brightly. It wasn't just my rose-tinted glasses as her brother kicking in. It really was a 1000 kW smile, and it wasn't just her trying to look pretty or cute. State. Full of enthusiasm, addicted to fried chicken, excited, happy. I felt Sunhwa's true feelings through Eye of Perception. She was extremely happy and thrilled that she found the crystal, though that, addicted to fried chicken, part in the middle was a little funny. Sunhwa called out from afar, I found it. I did well, right? She was covered in dirt from head to toe, like she seriously gave it her all. Even her face was smudged with something that looked like mud. Sung Ji-yu said jokingly, damn, I was trying to find it, but I lost to a frickin' middle schooler. How humiliating. It wasn't a normal crystal. It wasn't a crystal that would clear the gate when destroyed, but an information crystal that held some kind of info. Crystal holding the secret within the tomb of the Wind Warrior. Sponsored content. There is a special secret hidden within this crystal. When destroyed, you will acquire information related to the course of the Wind Warrior's life. Yuhyun got the crystal from Sunhwa. I'll destroy it, he younged him. When it was in Sunhwa's palm, it looked pretty big, but the crystal looked like a kid's toy in Yuhyun's massive hand. Here I go. Yu-hyun started exerting his muscles. The veins in his right arm stood out. As his blood vessels expanded, Yu-hyun's face turned beet red. Ha, ha, breathing hard, Yu-hyun turned to me. Youngnim, this thing isn't budging at all? I came closer to inspect the crystal. I hummed, thinking. Apparently, it wasn't a crystal you could just break. Pure physical force wouldn't do it. Sung-hyun, you give it a try. Alright. The teen nodded. He hadn't spoken up, but it seemed like he had already picked up some kind of hint. As he put the crystal in his palm while we all watched to see what he would do, I could tell one thing. His movements are supernatural. He acted almost like a person who knew exactly what he had to do to this crystal. It wasn't like he had knowledge from the future or anything. This was just his talent playing a role. Knowing what to do simply by looking. It was like a mechanic who automatically knew how to work a machine even without a manual. Like being able to play a game without reading the instructions. As soon as Sung-hyun saw the crystal, he figured out what he had to do. Observing with observer's eye. I saw mana swirling within Sung-hyun's body. It's fascinating to see every time. It felt very different from seeing with my physical eyes. I couldn't quite put it in words, but an energy shining with blue light went through Sung-hyun's heart and out his palm and back in, over and over again. The energy seemed to be alive. It moved almost like it had its own will. I guess this is how the mana moves when we use skills. I could only observe the tip of the iceberg right now. After all, my observer's eye proficiency was only 1 at the moment. The more my proficiency increases, the more I should be able to observe. I already couldn't wait for that moment. I didn't know how long it would take, but in any case, I was full of anticipation for the future. My life was already miles apart from the past, when I lived without a future, without hope, just trudging on with my eyes fixed on the present. I could succeed now. I could forge my own future. That's what I believed. The mana inside the clear crystal is being transferred to Sung-hyun's body. It was only possible to trace the flow with observer's eye. An energy resembling purple smoke went into Sung-hyun's palm and was absorbed into his body. He probably got some quest or something. I guessed he got something related to the secret of the Wind Warrior, but I didn't pry. There was no pressing need to find out right now. The clear crystal has been destroyed. The flash gate, tomb of the Wind Warrior, has been cleared. The gate itself was cleared, but we didn't get any additional rewards. Sponsored content. The rewards that can be obtained within the tomb of the Wind Warrior have already reached their maximum limit. The reward for clearing the flash gate will not be given. I wasn't too sorry to hear that. I'd already received a way bigger harvest than I had expected. 150k coins total, High Orc Spell Scroll, Uplex Dungeon First Entry Rights, and Great Orc Warrior's Gloves. They were all fantastic, but there was a prize better than all others. I've fully determined how the Observer class will grow. I had the pros and cons of the Observer class nearly down pat, and figured out what the nameless Observer wanted from me a little more concretely. That gave me a direction for my future playing. That's the biggest gain. And plus, I've also acquired Sung-hyun's full trust. We earned a great party member, though there were strong indications that he wouldn't get along with Sung Ji-yu. When these two worked together, their power would be equal to 10 magicians put together. Teleporting from the Flashgate, Tomb of the Wind Warrior, to the Flashgate, Hill of Blowing Wind. The key, the final wind, is necessary. A hologram appeared before our eyes. And underneath it appeared a keyboard of arrows. Apparently, we were supposed to type in the correct combination. Boss Hyukjin, what is this? I've got no clue. If you cannot find the key, one of the players will die. You have 1 minute. Everyone's expressions darkened. My heart became heavy as well. This is... I had a feeling, but I couldn't be 100% sure. Remaining time, 40 seconds. I spoke quickly. I think I know what this is. 35 seconds left. Sponsored content. But I can't be 100% sure. I remember the wind shape that blowed when we left the Hill of Blowing Wind. The arrows match the number of blank spaces. 25 seconds left. If you guys agree, I'll try putting it in. 15 seconds left. There wasn't much time, and I was the only one who had a clue. Okay, I'm in full agreement. Oppa, me too. Damn it, me too. I agree. 5 seconds left. The wind that blew when I blew out the candle. I remembered a refreshing wind blowing then as if to celebrate the clear we had just achieved. You have successfully found the key. Teleporting to the Hill of Blowing Wind. The flow of time has been distorted. Entering the Hill of Blowing Wind. We came back. Reaper scans. Translator, Lay. Proofreader. Ash. Join our Discord for updates on releases. https://dsc.gg/reapercomics. The flow of time was distorted. That had to mean that while we were clearing the Tomb of the Wind Warrior, the time within the Hill of Blowing Wind was frozen. When we found ourselves back on the hill, the other players didn't realize our absence at all. So this moment is when I discovered the candle on Sung-hyun's back. I heard a voice. What nonsense are you trying to say? It was the voice of the brown bear Kim Tae-chin. He was glaring at me. He'd seen me on the first floor and had apparently pegged me as prey, since he was a self-proclaimed predator. I retorted back, what? Scowling to show his displeasure at my casual tone, Tae-chin rolled his right shoulder, producing cracking noises. Sponsored content. That's weird. I thought there was something on the kid's back. Anyway, I dare you to try something weird. I'll cut off your head. Yoo-hyun stepped forward. Oi, you sure have a lot of crap to say. You asking for another beating? Tae-chin tucked his tail between his legs, muttering, it's not like I messed with you, geez. Mumbling to himself was all the resistance he could muster. Tisk tisk. He was still a famous player in his own right, so it was a little pathetic to see him so cowed by a single beating. If he acted like this, he would also lose the courageous Lion King's backing. Guess he'll disappear before long. He would either die within a dungeon or gate, or be killed by some player. In any case, it was unlikely he would leave his name in history's annals. Originally, Kim Tae-chin never got beaten by Yoo-hyun or Yunseo. Once again, the past changed a little because of my playing. However, I didn't regret it. I did what I should, and thanks to that, many players survive. The Flash Gate, Hill of Blowing Wind, has been cleared. Leaving the gate. I had earned so much from this place. It was no exaggeration to say I was walking a path paved with gold, one that couldn't even compare to the past. My mood soared. Someone shouted, we're back. At least in this moment, everyone was a friend and an ally. A few people even embraced each other and ran around in joy. Yoo-hyun and Sung Ji-yu stood next to me. Hee-young-nam, shouldn't we be acting like that, too? Damn, yeah, we should also hug it out and cheer, let our bromance shine. The words died in Sung Gu's throat. He and Yoo-hyun took a cautious step back. Wait, Hee-young-nam, I wasn't saying I'd really hug you. Goddamn, so scary. You could destroy the world with that gaze. Yunseo snickered. Yeah, anyway, we got a safe clear again. And the rewards are also amazing. Like I thought, it's most fun to play with the boss. Right, Sunhwa? Sunhwa nodded. It's super reassuring when Oppa is there. And it also feels super efficient. Yeah, your Oppa is the best. I just feigned deafness. Jo Sung-hyun was looking around in silence. I'm sure he got something related to the clear crystal earlier. He's probably thinking about whether he should share that or not. Without Observer's eye, I wouldn't have known, either. With his personality, it will take a little time. He was calm and cool-headed. He would take his time thinking about it subjectively. And if he decided in the end that I was worthy of his trust, he would come and consult me for advice. There's a very high chance he'll do that. Personally, I thought there was a 99% chance he would come to me. Let's give him a little time. Chapter 83. Laying Bare Bait. We made it back to the hall of the 12th floor that immediately ported us to the first gate, the Hill of Blowing Wind. The hall had several entrances and exits, and on the far side of the room, I saw members from the guild that would later stand tall as Korea's top guild, Taeguk Shield. They had intentionally come in late. The reason why they've come in only now, in the past, I didn't think anything of it, but now, I knew better, is because they have the precognitive dream user Ham So-hyun. I didn't know the range of her precognitive dream ability, but there was a high chance that she predicted some kind of danger here, which caused Sungshin's flagship, Taeguk Shield, to come later. Or it's because they wanted to make a late arrival, like protagonists. Either way, I could now see the Taeguk Shield guildies that hadn't been present during the clear of the Hill of Blowing Wind. Among them was Song Jinchul's oldest brother, Song Kyeol. He was the guildmaster of Taeguk Shield. TN. Author has changed the name of Sungshin's eldest grandson from Song Jinsok to Song Kyeol. I guess he'd be in his early 30s now. The guildmaster shared the same nickname as the guild, Taeguk Shield. He became well known as a fairly outstanding tank. In addition to him, there was the poison witch Cheon Suji, the golden priest Gong Jinhoon, and the spear demon Byun Gilsup. Wow, lots of big shots here. They finally showed up. They were the people I would be drawing out the future with. Soon, they would make my worth skyrocket. They were supporting actors in my scenario, so to speak. As I mused, many players celebrated. We're back. I survived. As they relished in the joy of being alive, some started talking about the clear rewards again, while others cried, their expressions dark. While everyone was still elated from their safe return, someone approached me. Mr. Kim Hyukjin, I am relieved to see you are safe. It was a group of 4 men. What's this now? I thought with amusement. 2 of the 4 men were familiar faces. The person standing at the very front was Kim Kongchul, who I had been acquainted with in my previous life as well, and the other was Song Jinchul. Non-awakened. Name: Song Jinchul. Age: 14. State: disdain, slight rage, jealousy. Disposition: arrogant, destructive, selfish. Summary: self-proclaimed chosen one, self-judged expert of negotiation and threat is a non-awakened. The disposition, state, summary only show the most representative and can change according to the situation. Because eye of perception's proficiency is not high enough, viewing more detailed information is impossible. Sponsored content. I was still getting, because eye of perception's proficiency is not high enough, viewing more detailed information is impossible, but I was still able to read more information than before. I could now see 2 summaries. I only saw self-proclaimed chosen one in the past. This time, there was another summary under it. Self-judged expert of negotiation and threat? Jinchul moved to the front to blatantly look me up and down. Being in his first year of middle school, he was short, small, and had a reedy voice, yet he acted like he was on top of the world. Apparently, the task of talking to me had been entrusted to Jinchul. He pointed at me, someone much older than him, with his chin. You're Kim Hyukjin? I stared back at the youngest grandson of the Sungshin chaebol. Our first meeting had been rather unpleasant as well. Who are you to make grandpa so interested in you? Was this the jealousy of a grandson who was robbed of his grandpa's attention? Ah, that explained his state. State: disdain, slight rage, jealousy. I found him more cute than anger-inducing. He was clearly jealous, but still trying to look down on me. The reason why President Song sent such a kid to me, I immediately read his intent, is because he's curious as to how I'll handle him. There was a really high chance he was testing me. He wanted to see if I was truly someone with the skills to back my refusal of the Taeguk Shield Guildmaster position. If he's really that curious, I'll show him. For the time being, dancing to the president's tune wasn't that bad an option. That would increase my value and worth. He'll probably be very shocked. Even I was shocked by myself. My party members: Taeguk Shield Guild members, Kim Taechin, the youngest grandson, Song Jinchul. Using these keywords, I drafted a completely new picture, one where I would work with my party members and use all of the above elements to maximize our value. Yeah, I'm Kim Hyukjin, what about it? Mister, did you just speak down to me? Yeah, I did. Are you crazy? Do you not know who I am? Nope, I don't. The no-good chaebol scion quickly flared to anger, spitting out with agitation. If you don't know who I am, then you have to be taught. Oi, make that bastard kneel before me. Being this disillusioned at his age was called Chunibyo syndrome. What are you doing? I said, grab that trash and make him kneel before me. Didn't you hear me? Sponsored content. The members of Taeguk Shield glanced our way. To start things off, this brat was due for a friendly little beatdown. Using the special ability metal. My metal had crushed orcs that could tear apart Song Jinchul and the other 4 men here with one hand. This ability was a rank higher than the one possessed by Jinchul's grandfather, the first president of Sungshin, Song Kyung. Metal instantly crushed the group of 4. Huh. Jinchul became deathly white. Kim Kongchul in front of him was the same. It was my first time using the ability on people, but it was apparently extremely effective. I patted Jinchul's shoulder. Have some manners, kid. A person's at their coolest when they talk to others with respect. I then walked past the frightened Jinchul. As Sunhwa trailed behind me, she stuck out her tongue and blew a quiet raspberry, but I just let it slide. Being slighted by a little girl he'd never seen before might actually be even more humiliating to Jinchul. Knowing that it would take the kid some time to shake off the effects of metal, I walked to one of the hall's exits. I could feel with eye of perception that quite a few people had been gathered here to control the players within. They purposefully went for a heavy-handed atmosphere. All the Players Association had to do was formally apologize much later. To push the players into submission. The players were still in their early stages of growth. It was clear to me that the Players Association wanted to grab control while they still could. At least in the early game, that wasn't a terrible strategy. It would allow the Players Association to quickly take its place and gain the wholehearted cooperation of the players. Sometimes, force is more effective than democratic or peaceful methods. Yoo-hyun had proven that to me earlier. Sung-shin must have come to the same conclusion. President Song Kyung intentionally crafted this situation. I could see his intent like it was written in red paint. It was fun. You cannot leave. They weren't as big as Yoo-hyun, but intimidatingly large people, hired muscle in black suits, were blocking the door. Most of them are non-awakened. Seeing that made me laugh. Even the oh-so-mighty President Song hadn't even begun to see the true power of players yet. What would have happened if the players hadn't submitted in the past and rioted? Even Kim Tae-chin over there could have easily wiped out these hired guards if he went wild with his axe. That was how enormous the gap between a player and a non-awakened was. Why not? I asked. The Players Association chairman has instructed it. I hummed, then looked around again. Up to this point, it was still the same as the past. Quite a lot of people were milling around on the 12th floor. Someone I didn't know picked up a mic and started talking. Players, your attention, please. With the situation the way it is, I will get right to the point. Sponsored content. What he said was simple. There were a lot of casualties, so the Players Association would use their authority to find out exactly what happened in the gate. To do that, they would seek the cooperation of one person after another to hear what they had to say. They said it was to assemble a database, but the atmosphere in the room was almost one of interrogation. The beginner players have been pretty much cowed. It might also be that they were unwillingly surrendering to the authority held by the Players Association. What they did was none of my business. I just had to play my own way. I'll leave the big picture for another day. I decided not to wrangle with the big picture today. Even if I didn't step in a future not too far from now, the players would realize on their own that there was no need to be so submissive to the Players Association. Boss, said Yunseo, her voice low. The mood here is so frosty. Did we commit some kind of crime? It seriously feels like they're treating us like criminals. She was smiling brightly, but I could feel bloodthirst from her. I felt the hired muscle blocking our way flinch. Picking his nose, Sung Ji-yu drawled. Just gimme the okay anytime and I'll burn them all to a crisp. You know my online handle, right? I'm the Jiandong Firemaster. I'd leave the big picture for another day, but there was no need to lower my value and the value of my team. I decided to live this life differently. I would forge my own life, and I wasn't going to be unfaithful to that creed here. Intentionally speaking up so that the surrounding people could hear me, I said, you're right. We didn't do anything wrong. Someone purposefully created this heavy-handed atmosphere, though I won't say who that someone is. Finally breaking free from the influence of metal, Song Jinchul shouted at me like he was having a fit. What bullshit are you saying? What you're saying makes zero sense. I would show this kid, no, President Song, whether I was saying bullshit or not. Let me show you how I set the stage. That stage would be bigger than he expected. Just then, Senia sent me a whisper request. Player Kim Hyukjin, I have a question. Ask away. What is the ultimate picture you are drawing? I cannot figure out where you are going with this. I wasn't surprised. Trying to spoil the Guardians? No, it is just that I need to know your intent so I can film a little more properly. Very good, Senia was also continuing to grow. I was happy to see it. I'll explain it just once, so listen up. If you can, use one pause authority. Senia hesitated, but in the end, she used a pause. Everyone and everything other than Senia and me became black and white. I'll make it brief. I'm going to use that kid Song Jinchul to send President Song Kyung a message, to not look down on us, and to properly evaluate our value. Is that all? No, it'd be no fun if that was all. I had to design this step by step, layer by layer. Listen well. First, I'll provoke Song Jinchul. Afterwards, Kim Tae-chin will take action, and when that happens, Taeguk Shield will also take action. After that, other Taeguk Shield guild members will move. Sponsored content. It's fine if you don't understand the process. I'm just talking about the result. I hope you'll film accordingly. Then is your provocation just now of Song Jinchul bait? Yes. Senia definitely grew a bit. She evolved from a fucking beginner to just a beginner. And then Kim Tae-chin will move? I have to make that happen, yeah. Alright, it seemed she was clear on that much. But how is Kim Tae-chin taking action connected to Taeguk Shield taking action? I cannot see any connection. After saying that, Senia's wings quivered for a moment. Ah, you can't mean. Oh ho, she must have guessed without me even needing to explain. Like Senia realized, there were other elements involved in this picture, though they couldn't be seen with the naked eye. Your prediction is correct. I will make them move. Song Jinchul is bait, as is Kim Tae-chin. I have judged that your true goal is Taeguk Shield. You're quite close. It seemed like Senia got the gist of what I was going to do. She had really gotten much smarter. Do you plan on acquiring Taeguk Shield? Yeah, something like that. I did omit a few parts of the process. There would be several stages to acquiring the guild. It wasn't something I could swallow in one gulp just because I had a vague desire to do so. I understand your intent, but I cannot see the process. That's why I'll show you. Senia's wings trembled once, very quickly. I will use this knowledge to inform my filming. Although I don't know the exact details of the process, I can see where you are going now. She'd see soon enough. In the end, Taeguk Shield will become mine. And through it, I would have a share of Sungshin's hefty support. I would get everything there was to get, and this would open the doors to a far more efficient play. The first stroke of this grand blueprint would be drawn out now. The pause has been deactivated. The world regained its color. Chapter 84. Laying Bare Bait, 2. Sponsored content. Mr. Kim Kongchul, I said, trying to remember what his actual title was. Oh, right, it was team leader of the player scouting team. Yes, Mr. Kim Hyukjin. He wasn't affected by metal anymore, but I could feel he was more restrained with me. Somehow, it feels like we are being treated like subordinates. Surely not. That's not the case at all. Kim Kongchul shook his head, his expression earnest. It is just that we wish to acquire slightly more precise information about the gate that just formed, as well as confirm player casualties. We must know what happened in the gate in detail. That is the duty of the Players Association. Players Association was the grand name for what was actually a private subsidiary of Sungshin. In other words, this was all just a corporation's profit-seeking. For now, I kept up the charade and put it nicely. It sounds like you intend on building a database. Yes, we will gather all kinds of data and make a large collection of information. In a way that will help mankind. It wasn't information that would help mankind, but information that would help Sungshin. But I didn't say that. They were doing what was profitable for them, and I, of course, was doing the same. That wasn't bad. Rather, it was all too natural. It was just that there was no need for me to lower myself for their profit. And if I don't want to cooperate? You will have no choice but to cooperate. He was exuding the same peculiar confidence I had felt last time, too. Even though he's a team leader. It wasn't like his insight was particularly outstanding. Summary. Ordinary person hungry for success. A lot could be inferred from his summary. Ordinary person being in his summary meant that he was a regular guy with no special traits. In 10 years, he'll become the Players Association's head of personnel. Making it fairly high up despite having ordinary abilities could only mean one thing. He either hugged the right thigh, or made a good impression on his superior. He was good at climbing the so-called corporate ladder. That's why he hasn't recognized the worth of players and is responding like this. Had President Song really not known that Kim Kongchul would act like this? No, he must have known. I had an inkling that he purposefully sent team leader Kim. He picked out a person who could act calmly, without a hint of reserve. That was the president's tactic to maintain this farce. He was also bound to be curious as to how I would handle his grandson, a longtime sufferer of chunibyo. You seem to be very confident. Because all players in Korea will become members of the Korean Players Association. Sponsored content. Is that law? It wasn't. It was just that the players themselves hadn't realized their own value and were still dazed after the whirlwind of events where several players died. That was why they were cooperating with Sungshin. It will soon become law. I had no doubt it would. After all, Sungshin had an enormous sway over the government. However, as enormous and powerful as Sungshin was, the latent power and worth we players held was just as big. By soon, you mean that it isn't law yet. I took a step closer to Kim Kongchul. I'm not very happy about this high-handed atmosphere, the feeling of being interrogated. I refuse to cooperate with Sungshin in such a situation. I am not an employee of Sungshin. The prey should be taking the bait around now. I could feel Song Jinchul's body trembling with rage. And I have absolutely zero desire to kneel to a rude brat like him. Considering that he submitted to metal earlier, his pride was surely well and properly dented. Summary. Self-proclaimed chosen one whose pride is injured. Mr. Move. My target was never Kim Kongchul. It was always the young rascal named Song Jinchul. Kim Kongchul stepped back. Did someone shit in your cereal? Is your head for show? Do you not know who I am? Of course I did. A third-generation chaebol spoiled brat. I retorted back. Do you know who I am? Just why the hell are you kicking up a fuss when you don't even know who I am? Jinchul's eyes filled with astonishment. He was really easy to handle. This Chable young master had surely never experienced such treatment before. A delusional edgelord just needed to be treated like a delusional edgelord. Does being a third-generation Chable kid make you invulnerable to pain? Why you? Jinchel's body quivered, and then he burst out with a stream of hostility. I am Song Jinchel, the person who will one day become the rightful master of Sungshan. After revealing his identity, Song Jinchel puffed out his chest. The powerful name, Sungshan, filled him with hot air. What's wrong? Scared? As if. I gave him an intentional smirk. A middle school student who talks down to a team leader of Sungshan. A young kid with no qualifications who can willfully barge into matters between players and the association. A moron with not a single rat's tail of respect or manners. Even without eye of perception, I would have realized who this brat was. Anyone could tell with their eyes closed that you're most likely a third-generation Chable brat. Song Jinchel's face flushed red hot. State, very angry. Sponsored content. All the other emotions had been pushed aside, making it so that eye of perception could pick up only rage. The boy was very mad, it seemed. Song Jinchel spat out, You're going to regret this. Do you want me to make you feel regret right now? I took one step closer. The three bodyguards behind Jinchel stepped in front of him, almost like they were his guardian knights. But it was fine. I'd never intended on laying a hand on the kid anyway. Now, he'll run off to Grandpa and tell him what happened today. What President Song's spoiled grandson would tell him would inevitably differ from what Kim Kongchul would tell him. The kid would probably spill the whole story without a filter. I looked Song Jinchel dead in the eye. The information we have is essentially new culture. That will soon become the driving force for the future. President Song Kyung, please listen up. I won't sell my worth for mere peanuts. I smirked again, and especially not to a spoiled brat like you. Why you? No matter how young you might be, it's clear that you've got absolutely zero eye for things. Do you think a third-generation Chable kid like you could really inherit the company? Is your grandpa really so foolish? I blatantly attacked the premier Chable of Korea, as well as Song Kyung himself. All of my words would no doubt enter the president's ears via his grandson. Without a filter. The Merchant of Venice is greatly satisfied by your attitude and guts. It seemed the Merchant of Venice liked my response, too. Considering President Song's personality. I had already met the president once. He might be slightly incensed that I went after a young kid, but he was definitely not one to mix private and work matters. He would actually end up seeing me in a new light. After all, there weren't many people who could talk to Jinchel like this even after knowing he was President Song's grandson. At least, not in Korea. I'll show you that this kind of method won't work on me, on us. I didn't look kindly to being treated like a criminal dragged to the interrogation room and being made to share each and everything that happened, rewards and tips included. In this rapidly changing new world, information was essentially money, power, and authority. I couldn't just sit here and let that be taken from me with cattle prods. And even if I were to give you information, there should be appropriate compensation. I was sending President Song a message loud and clear through his grandson. Instead of using a method like this, come with a more attractive carrot next time. Something a little better than a pathetic $2 million annual salary contract. Something a little more appropriate for our worth. If it's President Song, he'll get what I'm saying. That was enough for using Jinchel as my mouthpiece. Alright, I've laid the framework. Sponsored content. Now, it was time for the slightly bigger picture. There were two reasons why I refused to cooperate with them. The first was that I didn't want to lower our value in asking prices. The second was to make someone witness our quarreling. Someone in this room. I glimpsed someone with a bulky physique walking over in a rage. Someone like the brown bear Kim Taechin. Taechin had already lost to Yunseo in a 1-versus-1 and was one-sidedly beaten by Yoohyun, so his pride must have been sorely bruised. Despite that, his summary was still, self-proclaimed predator. It seemed he was still riding the hero high from destroying the pillars. Taechin has labeled me as prey. I had already sensed his gaze stabbing into me. My eye of perception continuously picked up a gaze prickly with not-so-friendly intentions. There was no doubt that the courageous Lion King's quest was still unfinished. The picture was all drawn out. You must be desperate to catch the eye of Sungshan, yes? If he wanted to do that, he'd have to pick a fight with me. He also had decent justification to do so, since I was the only one refusing to cooperate. If he suppressed me, he would look very valiant. But he was hesitating and not rushing in. From the look in his eyes and the energy I could feel from him via eye of perception, he clearly wanted to dash over and shout, "Why are you the only one acting out, you bluffing piece of shit?" But he was holding back. Wait, I think it's because Yuhyun and Yunseo are next to me. I realized the reason. Yuhyun and Yunseo, go somewhere else. Naturally. Without making it obvious, I said quietly, turning briefly to the two. Yuhyun immediately started whistling. There wasn't even music, but he even danced with his shoulders. All of a sudden? Whistling. Here? I told him to not make it obvious, but he made it so awkward I nearly withered on the inside. Sung Ji-yu shook his head and followed, muttering, "Ha, that idiot. I shouldn't make him act." It looked, by all accounts, that I shouldn't make Yuhyun act. In comparison, Yunseo slipped away and blended into another group of players rather naturally. From her noticeably light steps, I suspected she was using her movement skill. That left just me, Sung-hyun, and Sunhwa. Sung-hyun is a thorn in his side. Sung-hyun played a decisive role in the Hill of Blowing Wind, clear. Taechin was sure to be unhappy with him. And Sunhwa's easy to underestimate. As far as Taechin could see, I no longer had anyone to protect me. He'll come now, right? Sure enough, the large man approached. This bear was very good at taking bait. Oi, I've been listening over there. He came right up to me, looming over me with his massive frame. He lived up to his nickname. You're being a bit harsh there. Do you think all the players here are stupid? The folks from the association are saying we should work together to gather data, so why are you being so difficult? Are you the only one who's too good for this? What do you think the folks from the association will do after gathering the data? Well, obviously, they'll make things way better for later playing. 'Cause we'll have more info. Once again, I smirked. Perhaps finding my actions amusing, the Merchant of Venice sent me a gift. The Merchant of Venice sends you the temporary skill, Smiling Provocation. Sponsored content. Like the name suggested, it was an ability that would make the opposite party feel terrible as you smiled at them. It wasn't some big awesome skill, and later, it would even be frequently used via scrolls. The ability was something akin to a joke. Using the temporary skill Smiling Provocation. I smirked, knowing that it would greatly irritate Taechin. Do you truly think it will make things better for playing? I shook my head, as if telling him he was wrong. Surely you don't think the Players Association is moving for the good of the public? Since when has Sungshin been a charity? At this time, the Players Association would not act for the good of the public. They were 100% a private subsidiary working for Sungshin. This is a place where Sungshin, recognizing the value of new tech, invited players, the people most closely related to new tech. To say it outright. It's laughable that they're already treating us like their company employees. It's hard to tell whether they've invited us or are interrogating us. Taechun's face reddened a little. We don't have a superior-subordinate relationship. Raising my voice a little, I said, this is a type of business cooperation, one where our interests must align for us to work together. Do you think that in a business, the other party will give me equal treatment if I'm lowering my worth, taking initiative to bow down low, and scrambling to present myself as a slave? Idiot. I continued to read his mood with eye of perception. That's right, get mad, exactly as I want you to. Is that block above your shoulders an ornament? I never intended on having a logical debate with Kim Taechin. That wasn't his role in the picture I was drawing. Shit like you who's all bark and no bite dares. Taechin fumed. I tolerated you because you're a non-combat class, but there's no second chance for you, you piece of shit. That's right, in my scenario, this is your role. Getting whipped into a frenzy, I sneered inwardly. Up to this point, the scene was progressing as I wished. The nameless observer is observing you. The courageous Lion King ridicules your articulate mouth. The whispering devil is having fun. The Merchant of Venice has a high evaluation of you. The next part was already set in stone. As I thought. The situation unfolded exactly as I conceived it. Chapter 85, Enlightenment. Sponsored content. I tolerated you because you're a non-combat class, but there's no second chance for you, you piece of shit. So what was he gonna do about it? PvP with a non-combat class player? Though by future standards, that's completely out of the question. Before I regressed, there were many cases where non-combat classes played a more active role than combat classes. Be it detoxification, heals, or buffs, there were fewer non-combat class players than combat players, and they were rare. In addition, the worth of a player had massive differences depending on their proficiency and type of ability. With that in mind, each of the guilds made tacit rules to prevent combat class players from persecuting non-combat class players. A combat player sending a non-combat player a PvP request? That was ridiculous. If guilds were a little more well established, Kim Tae-chan would have probably gotten dragged away and beaten by his guildmaster. Especially because I was a player with a class called Observer, and played a role close to a Sovereign. Well, it's not like he knows. Among the non-combat classes, the classes that received the best treatment were the ones in the Sovereign category. It was a little embarrassing to say it myself, but there was a reason why Yunseo constantly praised me, saying that the perceived difficulty was worlds apart when I was there versus when I wasn't. Sovereign classes were literally noble classes. They were hard to raise, hard to pull off, and even harder to become a high-level ranker with. But once they made it there, they were nobles who stood above all others. Notices came in. You have received a PvP request. If you accept, a PvP zone will be declared. From this, I inferred one more thing. A beginner player under level 30 sent the PvP request on his own accord. In order to send a PvP request, you had to receive the permission of a high-level, sovereign player, or receive the help of an intermediate administrator, like what Percy did earlier. Or, a guardian would have to intervene. The courage lover stepped in again. It seemed our little courage lover bestowed Tae-chan the right to make a PvP request. That was how much he wanted to see this fight between us. I'm certain I've already told you many times that I'm a non-combat class. So what, gonna run away like a coward? He openly sneered at me. His eyes were full of scorn, as well as the confidence of a predator. The current Kim Tae-chan was convinced that combat players are the true players. No, that's not what I mean. I'm just a little worried. Don't worry, you won't die, Tae-chan said, guffawing. This dumb brick was completely missing my point. How will you have the face to walk around after getting beaten up by a non-combat class? Sponsored content. I'm not worried for myself, but for you. Senia, notarize the fact that I'm a non-combat class. Senia showed herself, which drew a round of astonished murmurs. So, beautiful. Playing must be so amazing if you do it with that kind of intermediate administrator. Both Senia and Hyukjin ignored the trivial mutterings of the crowd. The stage was set, a stage where even an intermediate administrator had stepped in. Hyukjin continued, this is definitely a proposal made by a player to another player, yes? An intermediate administrator hadn't mediated it. Percy, the streamer who had spat a ball of highly acidic green saliva, was likely streaming the scene in invisible mode. The fact that Percy hadn't appeared yet despite the situation having developed to this extent meant that an existence ranked higher than Percy was involved. Hyukjin was sure that existence was the courageous Lion King. That was why it was necessary to make things very clear here. Yes, that is correct. The results of my check show that player Kim Tae-chan personally made a PvP request to player Kim Hyukjin. Then that means this is a matter between humans unrelated to system-made scenarios. Only then did Senia realize Hyukjin's intent. A matter between humans. Hyukjin's sentence precisely defined this fight as a matter unrelated to the system. The Lady of the Scales nods. The Whispering Devil is having fun. The Nameless Observer observes. They were now, to a certain degree, exempt from the system's rules. Player Kim Hyukjin has made a nominal pretext to not act as an observer. It was decided with one sentence. Hyukjin would no longer move like an observer, but like a combat class player taking on a PvP. He made it seem like he was talking to her, Senia, but his actual intent was clear and defined. The nameless observer said that they would observe. With that, all of Hyukjin's bases were covered. There wasn't a single hole in this tightly weaved scenario. Now, Hyukjin had the freedom to play out his own role in the scenario he himself crafted. Accepting the PvP request. Sponsored content. A PvP zone has been declared. A space free of death, the PvP zone, was established. Kim Tae-chan smiled broadly. Good. He was certain he could wreck Hyukjin. He was humiliated twice earlier, but thankfully, an opportunity to recover his face landed in his lap. He had finally grasped a good opportunity for him to prove his courage. Here I come. The match began. Tae-chan took out his massive axe, the weapon that had made him stand out in the hill of blowing wind. Hyukjin wasn't all that intimidated by that imposing weapon. He read Tae-chan's entire body with observer's eye, seeing everything with his eyes. His balance is passable. From the looks of it, Tae-chan would step with his right foot before approaching. He's underestimating me, so he'll make a direct approach. He would come close enough to put Hyukjin inside his range. Observer's eye read every single one of Tae-chan's movements. It felt distinctly different from when he was observing Yunseo or Yuhyun. It's like watching a video in 0.5 speed. When he was reading Yunseo or Yuhyun, a constant stream of information came in at real time, and he had to quickly derive new analyses. But it was different with Kim Tae-chan. It looked to Hyukjin that the hulking man was moving slowly to fulfill an already predetermined action. This is a new feeling. It was true that Tae-chan was lower level, but reading an average player's movements felt so much easier after reading only top players all this time. It felt enlightening, somehow. I can see it. He could see it precisely, Tae-chan's fight pattern. Yunseo watched the PvP closely. Let's focus. Simply watching Hyukjin move will be a big lesson for me. She had the feeling that something about Hyukjin's movements was odd. While Tae-chan was moving in, Hyukjin moved one small step to the right, far more slowly than normal. He should be able to instantly subdue the opponent if he used flash step. He wasn't using it on purpose, and she understood why. It would be idiotic to show off your skills in front of this many people. This was different from when he killed the big mouth lizard earlier. There was no need to expose all his abilities. Yunseo had instinctively realized that showing 70% of one's abilities and hiding the remaining 30% was favorable for a player. Whumph. The large axe grazed past Hyukjin's forehead. Tae-chan swung his axe in quick succession. Sponsored content. Whumph. Whumph. He attacked Hyukjin, his axe creating loud noises as it swung by, looking extremely threatening. Kuhahahaha. Tae-chan felt a rush of exhilaration and triumph. His opponent was busy scrambling to dodge. He knew as well as anyone that his attack speed wasn't very fast. But the fact that he could attack to his heart's content like this meant that his opponent was just that slow. Just how long are you gonna keep running away? Whumph. He kept swinging his axe. After making an opening, he would crush Hyukjin's head with a single downward swing. He was sure of his victory. This guy has a big mouth, but it looks like he'll be one-hit KO'd? Confidence bubbled up within him. Many of the players watching the match were also unable to discern Hyukjin's movements. As I thought, a non-combat class is different from a combat class, after all. He was super confident, so I thought there would be something special about him, but nope. Yeah, he's gonna get wrecked. But among all the players gathered here, some were outstandingly skilled. These players, the top 10%, felt that something was weird. Jo Sung-hyun was the same. There's something more to those movements. It was hard to explain in concrete terms, but something was strange. He could feel it through the wind. The wind that Hyukjin's movements created, the movement of the air, was extremely peaceful. Ah. When he focused, he realized it. His class was Child of Wind. He analyzed the information he got through the wind, the movement of the air. I get it. He understood why it felt so odd. Does this make any sense? It shouldn't make any sense, but it was happening in front of his very eyes. Hyukjin Hung is dodging before Kim Tae-chan's attack? Hyukjin wasn't seeing the attack and then dodging. He was moving in advance to a position where he wouldn't get hit even before the attack started. He didn't move while Tae-chan was actually moving his axe. Almost like he already knows where the axe will go. He was like a speedrunner who had the game memorized. Someone who knew exactly where and what kind of attack would occur. That was why he was able to dodge even without seeing the attack. There was no doubt about it. There was hardly any time delay. Unless you looked closely, you wouldn't notice it at all. But Jo Sung-hyun could feel it keenly. Sponsored content. Ha, ha. After a furious flurry of attacks, Tae-chan gasped for breath, showing his failure to regulate his stamina. He looked like someone who had never once considered what it meant to pace himself. On the other side, Hyukjin briefly forgot he was fighting Tae-chan. His thoughts were focused wholly on the strange sensation he was experiencing. When fighting an opponent far weaker than himself, a function of observer's eye seemed to be kicking in. It felt like something was being sketched out in his head and fading away, over and over again. Like I can almost grasp it, but it's gone the next moment. He intentionally provoked Kim Tae-chan. Try attacking some more, why don't you? You slimy little rat. Hyukjin purposefully kept dodging Tae-chan's attacks. He read Tae-chan's fight pattern and the trajectory of his axe. Instead of doing it fully consciously, he partly entrusted that mysterious sense to his instincts. He entrusted his body to the flow. Almost like a person born with a God-given gift for battle. Ah. He had a flash of understanding. The hazy feeling that had been bothering him became a little more concrete. This is it. It was like a dam bursting and overflowing. At the same time, the notices came in. You have become cognizant of a new enlightenment. The grade of eye of perception has increased. You have reached a new stage. The PvP match with Kim Tae-chan gave Hyukjin a completely unexpected, new stage. A new stage. Hyukjin realized instinctively what that was. Sponsored content. Chapter 86. Enlightenment, 2. Sponsored content. After reading that Eye of Perception had leveled up, I immediately checked the details. Type. Innate ability basic acquisition conditions. Sixth sense calm observer's eye additional acquisition condition. Overcome the death sentence of sixth sense, overcome pain detailed explanation. Eye of Perception is an eye of intuition, meaning the user gains concrete knowledge about objects in the outer world through their sense of intuition. It allows the user to intuit and receive information about the target. Proficiency. 2. Traits. Distinguish between awakened and non-awakened read status windows sense danger resistance towards illusory attacks or apparition magic additional power. Future sight. With the increase in proficiency from 1 to 2, a new category, additional power, was added. Future sight. I knew what it was without having to open up the detailed explanation. Just like the name suggested, it was the ability to see the future. I took a look at the detailed explanation anyway. Future sight. An eye that can glimpse the future. When PvPing or hunting, you can precisely predict the movements and attacks of the opponent or monster. However, be warned that a great deal of mental power and mana will be consumed in proportion to the opponent's abilities. I was already feeling the effects of the new ability. As expected of the cheat level, Eye of Perception, it produced an ability that could read an opponent's movements in advance. What I was sensing earlier. This meant it wasn't just a vague feeling anymore, but a concrete skill I could use far more reliably and methodically. Let's try using it right away. There was a note that the consumption of mental power and mana would be enormous depending on the opponent's level. It shouldn't be very draining with Kim Tae-chan as my opponent, so it was worth taking for a spin. In all things, trying it out in practice was the best. Sponsored content. Activating the power future sight. You are within Observer's domain. You are using Observer's eye. The mana and mental power consumption of future sight is reduced. I saw a panting Kim Tae-chan. He made a big swing of his axe. No. He hadn't swung yet. What I felt just now was an illusion. In reality, Tae-chan hadn't swung his axe yet. This is future sight. While I was awed, Tae-chan ran in exactly like I had seen him do moments earlier. When facing Tae-chan, I can see about 1 second in advance. An unprecedented ability to read what an opponent would do 1 second in advance. A vivid future that had a time delay but appeared before my eyes in perfect clarity like it didn't. A fight pattern that was even more definite and concrete than sensing it with my intuition. I do feel myself tiring. That had to be what it meant by the consumption of mental power being high. I couldn't describe it exactly, but it kind of felt like I was losing steam, like my vigor was being eaten away. I could feel my body growing heavier, even though it wasn't actually that tired. As the proficiency of Eye of Perception rises, future sight should grow stronger, too. I couldn't expect too much from the beginning. This ability was one that would shine brighter the more my level increased and the more Eye of Perception leveled up. I dodged every attack from Kim Tae-chan with ease. That was enough testing, for now. Stopping the use of the power future sight. Tae-chan gasped for breath. Ha. Sponsored content. In comparison, I wasn't all that tired. I felt like I'd gone on a short walk. I did feel a little tired and drained, but it wasn't severe. Didn't I tell you about my class? Non-combat class. Class name, Observer. There was no reason to state the name outright, but there was also no need to hide every little bit of my abilities. I wasn't planning on openly doing things at the forefront, but I also didn't intend on bending backwards to lower my value. I'm a non-combat class. Shut up. Kim Tae-chan swung his axe again, but I didn't even dodge this time, knowing it wouldn't reach me in the first place. His swing was full of power. It was no wonder that he ran out of strength so quickly. Well, I'm sure he's fucking pissed. He hasn't been able to hit a non-combat class even once. How embarrassing must it be for a combat class player to be helpless before a non-combat class player in front of so many people? But it wasn't my business to worry about him. There was only one reason why I was saying this. Kim Kongchul and Song Jinchul, listen up. It was to send a message to those two, as well as to the powers that be in Sungshan who still didn't get it and the Taeguk Shield Guild members who were acting like they were the chosen ones, like nobles. The foundation of my class is observation. I said to shut up. He charged at me again, his movements slow and clumsy from exhaustion. I casually closed in on him. The distance between us was now mine to control. I chopped his wrist with the side of my hand. Using the skill Excellent Strike. Though I wasn't using a weapon, Even my bare hand would deal a great amount of damage to Taichin. Ah, he yelped, dropping his axe. Thud. The large axe fell to the ground with a boom. Taichin clutched his wrist and pulled away a little. His foot lifted into the air in instinctive retreat, his balance crumbling a little. Is this how you do it? I immediately grabbed him and threw him over my back, mimicking the judo shoulder throw I'd glimpsed on YouTube before. It went unexpectedly well. I'd never learned how to do it, but maybe reading Yoo-hyun's movements had helped. Goo! As his back hit the ground, there was a resounding crash as loud as his heavy body. Struggling to right himself, he coughed painfully. My class is fundamentally one that continuously observes. Sponsored content. It wasn't a total lie. 70% was the truth, while 30% was a lie. That was the ratio I was aiming for, like countless rankers in the future I came from. And now, I was going to resolve this situation my way. One that, while continuously observing, plays an intermediary role to ensure that each player's playing joins smoothly into one fluid whole. Cough, cough. One that, using the information gained by observing, directs the battlefield my party members and I are on to our favor and occasionally gives orders. With this, the people at Sungshin and the Guardians alike would know what I was trying to say. But I still spelled it out a little more clearly, in a way that was slightly easier to understand. A class that draws out the efficiency of the party and maximizes each player's latent potential to allow the raid or hunt to progress as optimally as possible. I intentionally made things a little more dramatic, taking my time to build up the climax. Because the people at Sungshin were watching, as well as the Guardians. My class is sovereign. A short and sweet personal resume, effective and to the point. After the commotion that ensued, Kim Hyukjin and his party members left the Players Association building. As soon as they went out the front door, Choi Sung-ji-yu reproduced the event that had just occurred, intentionally deepening his voice. My class is sovereign, he mimicked, his face serious. And then, he marveled all by himself. Kya, that was hella classy. He clearly remembered the scene earlier. Somehow or another, when Hyukjin delivered the "my class is sovereign" line, the room happened to be pinprick silent. And at least from what Sung Ji-yu had seen, Hyukjin was absolutely compatible with a class called sovereign. Sung Ji-yu continued to make a fuss. This kind of thing is a little chunibyo, but hot damn, do I love it. He suddenly grabbed Hyukjin's hand. Damn, but great sovereign, I have a question. Grasping Hyukjin's hand with both hands, Sung Ji-yu gazed at Hyukjin with eyes he probably thought were shining. What kind of sovereign lays out a combat player with his bare hands? For a moment, Hyukjin pondered. If he chopped the back of this guy's neck with his hand, would he faint, or not? Perhaps sensing Hyukjin's murderous intent, Sung Ji-yu quickly took a step back. But seriously, though, I think even Yoo-hyun wouldn't have been able to move like that. Right? Yunseo, who had particularly remarkable talent for 1 versus 1 PvP, offered her own analysis. It's not cut and dry. Yoo-hyun obviously wins in pure physical ability and damage, but our boss Hyukjin was using observation to read Taechun's movements in advance and assume a far more favorable position. That's why he was able to dominate the guy so easily. Hyukjin glanced sideways and saw Sunhwa grinning from ear to ear, looking very pleased. The sight of her smiling so brightly made him happy, too. Why are you smiling like that? It was super satisfying when you threw that guy, Oppa. You went swoosh, and his body went wee, and crashed with a ba-bam. Totally serves him right. That so? Sunhwa nodded vigorously, fiercely agreeing. Smiling, Hyukjin walked a little more. But Oppa, you're walking slowly on purpose, right? The rest of the party had noticed it as well, even Jo Sung-hyun, who wasn't that close to Hyukjin yet. Sponsored content. I am. Why? I'm waiting for something. Yunseo licked her lips. What's this feeling I'm getting? That something fun is about to happen. It felt like fun things happened around Hyukjin. It was like that in their first date together, when they went to Japan, and now. What could it be? She didn't ask, but she could feel it. Hyukjin wasn't at ease right now. From the way he moved and the look in his eyes, she could tell that right now, Hyukjin was preparing for battle. As if Yoo-hyun had also picked up on the strange atmosphere, he turned his head, his neck cracking. Hyukjin stopped in place and turned around. There's no way it would end like this. This was something that hadn't happened in the past. Kim Taechin wasn't reduced to such a sorry state, and he never PvP'd with Hyukjin. But despite that, Hyukjin was able to read the future based on guardian disposition and Kim Taechun's personality. He had a rough idea of what was going to happen. With the courageous Lion King's personality, He would never want things to end on such a bland note. Hyukjin didn't kill Taechin on purpose earlier. Even though the man would revive if killed since it was a PvP zone, Hyukjin stayed his hand intentionally. There was no real need to kill him, plus he figured it would stimulate the courageous Lion King and Taechin even more. This makes a better stage. That was why he left him alive and left the building. What would the courageous Lion King and Kim Taechin really choose to do? Stop right there, you piece of trash. I won't be satisfied unless I fucking kill you. Giving off a different feel from before, Kim Taechin charged at Hyukjin, his eyes bright red. He was definitely not his normal self. He almost looked like the magic troll in its berserker state. I'll definitely kill you. Let's finish this. And then, Taechin let out a furious scream. Heat billowed out of his body. Grr. A strange growl came from his lips, and he looked every bit like an enraged bull. Not only that, but some shapes started materializing behind him. As I thought. Hyukjin's lips curled upwards. As I thought, this is how you want to do it. He had been waiting for this. The ruler of the plains had finally made their move. Chapter 87, Heroic Debut. Sponsored content. I intentionally left the building, knowing the courageous Lion King and Kim Taechin wouldn't leave things at that. I wanted a more open space to fight a little more comfortably, so that the ruler of the plains can move a little more freely. There were a lot of players on the 12th floor. An equally large number of guardians were watching, and in the crowd were players those guardians valued. The ruler of the plains didn't have the guts to cause an uproar in such a place. I remembered it very clearly. The ruler of the plains burns with hostility towards you. The ruler of the plains detests you. The ruler of the plains has reached the limit of their patience. They sent a whopping 3 messages saying similar things in one go. It wasn't confirmed, but people believed that the number of similar messages a guardian could send was limited to 3. The ruler of the plains went all the way to the limit to warn me. They were waiting for their chance. And so, I gave them that chance. The courageous Lion King was also eyeing a chance to make Taechin and me fight again. Me being down here is perfect for that. I knew the ruler of the plains would throw a fit at some point. And I knew that when that happened, the courageous Lion King would also join in, exactly like I planned. I told you, I'll set the stage. Rather than the ruler of the plains causing an uproar alone, it was better for the courageous Lion King to join the fray. The two of them probably had an agreement to act against me right now. The berserk Taechin made a strange growling noise from his throat. I'll kill you. Behind him, chimera monsters were baring their fangs like they wanted to charge at us right away. Orcanthrope 32 Latvian Laches. Sponsored content. They were fusions of orcs and lycanthropes. Basically, chimeras. There were 6 of them. They sure made a lot of them. They probably made as many as their guardian abilities or the system prescribed limits allowed. It must have cost an enormous amount to make that many. Overall, the monsters looked similar to lycanthropes, but they had misshapen green skin instead of wolf fur. They were also using weapons like clubs or spears, like orcs. They're fundamentally stronger than lycanthropes. They had no weakness of being enfeebled by water. They were also physically strong and belonged to a race categorized as orc level or higher. Naturally, modern weapons wouldn't work against them. Yunseo drew her sword. Boss, this looks a bit dangerous. They're all level 32, and the energy they're giving off is no joke. And what's with Kim Taechin? He's acting like he's gone mad all of a sudden. Even without my orders, my party members fell into position on their own accord. To my amusement, Sung Hyun and Sung Ji Yu were standing with their backs to each other, taking the optimal position to synergize. In order to protect the two magicians, Sunhwa was holding a large shield next to them, and Yu Hyun stood next to me, readying his mana. Youngnim, he said to me. How come they're not attacking Taechin? Because Taechin is no different from a monster right now. To be more precise, the monsters recognized him as a monster. The guardians surely had a hand in it. Listen up, those guys are faster than lycanthropes. My words implied that no one other than me or Yunseo could overpower the orcanthropes. Their characteristics have changed a lot, so I don't think the weakness of lycanthropes will apply, and it's also impossible to fight them like when we fought the great orc warrior. In other words, if we fight them head-on, we'll take significant damage. If we were unlucky, someone could even die. Fuck, should I just burn them to a crisp then? Want me to show you the Jaengdong Firemaster? He wasn't being serious. Sung Ji-yoon knew that throwing out a big attack would pull the aggro to him. The moment that happened, there was a 99% chance the magician class Sung Ji-yu would die. Metal probably won't work right now. I said one more thing to my party members. For now, stay put while drawing as little aggro as possible. The police and other players will come to support us. Sponsored content. If my prediction was correct, the people upstairs should already have seen this coming, and someone would eventually come down. That someone would very likely be the Taeguk Shield Guild members. Taeguk Shield coming down didn't necessarily mean that a new path opened up for me. It simply meant that the police and reporters would take action as well. Sungshin might only be a corporation, but I was sure the government would act. Even if they didn't bring fighter jets and tanks, they would at least send special forces armed with automatic weapons, and quickly. Naturally, reporters would also rush over to provide coverage. To make a flashy debut, Taeguk Shield will intentionally take their time coming down. But the ruler of the plains also wanted to drag things out, because they wanted to see me shrivel in fear. So in essence, the two parties had the same intent. In that case, the picture is clear. The Orcanthropes weren't attacking us right away. They were simply giving off a threatening aura. The courageous Lion King, who was getting a share of the action instigated by the ruler of the plains, was also waiting. They won't attack us right away. Stay on the ready. In a little while, they'll fight with the police. The government might even send special forces here. The special forces would definitely start attacking the monsters, and there was a very high chance they'd act overbearing with us, like Sungshin had done upstairs. Why? Because they had to dampen our spirits. There's a high chance they'll act overbearing with us, but don't respond and just stay put. We won't be killing the mobs this time. I had already leveled a veiled declaration of war against Sungshin. Not only did I basically threaten the youngest grandson of Sungshin's president, but I also confidently declared that I would raise my value with my own two hands. In order to control me and the other players, Sungshin would want to show their strength by moving government forces and saving our lives to get us indebted to them. Yunseo asked, Boss Hyukjin, what do we need to do? Make sure the aggro doesn't go to the civilians. Taeguk Shield will hunt the monsters. Will Taeguk Shield really go in and hunt them? I have to make them. That won't boost the casualties, will it? Trust me, today, those guys will be hunted without any losses on our side. Was I just imagining it, or did Yunseo's cheeks redden a little? Oh okay, I will trust you. For some reason, she seemed to be awfully polite all of a sudden. Just then, I heard another growl. Kim Taechin was exuding an aura no inferior to the growling Orcanthropes. And then came the loud sounds of sirens. Huh? Like Boss said, the police really are coming. Be it police or special forces, it was useless. They can't be killed with modern weapons. Sponsored content. There was just no way. From orcs onwards, modern weapons were useless. The nameless observer is observing you. The whispering devil is delighted by your scheme. The merchant of Venice has pinpointed exactly what your intent is. The incomprehensible, whispering devil, an extremely quick-witted merchant of Venice, seemed to know what kind of situation this was. Right now, the stage was set and the action was waiting for the right moment to begin. The two guardians were greatly enjoying the show I had crafted with the guardians' dispositions, Kim Taechun's personality, and all the other elements in mind. This is the police. Police cars pulled up, and the sound of helicopter blades came from above. The police and special forces streamed out of their cars. As if to show off their strength, they spoke to us in a commanding tone. We will kill the monsters. In the meantime, the Taeguk Shield Guild members also came down. Their timing was absolutely impeccable, like they had measured it with a ruler. To start, I gave a warning. I am a player with a special class. It's dangerous here, modern weep. I wasn't able to continue. A policeman wearing a black special forces uniform gestured me into silence. We will handle it, civilians, for your own safety, please get far away. Get far away, was the nice version of what was really, fuck off. That was the true message written in every part of his expression and tone. They seemed to have a lot of faith in their abilities. Maybe I stopped too many dungeon breaks. Actually, orcs should have already appeared in the real world. They should have caused a lot of damage. But because I prevented that from happening, these guys had no clue about the shields monsters of a certain level possessed. A person who looked like a commanding officer said sternly, if you do not cooperate, we will use force to temporarily detain you. They looked ready to use their guns if we didn't comply. I raised both hands behind my head and gave them one last piece of advice. This was all I could do. Your weapons won't work against them. You need the strength of players. We will be the judge of that. Back off. They have a shield that modern weapons don't work against. I said to back off. I had given as much warning as I could. I took a few steps backwards. Seemingly pleased by my submissive attitude, The man spoke into his radio. Sponsored content. Fire on my signal. Reporters also rushed in to broadcast the situation. With them, every piece was present. The courageous Lion King and ruler of the plains, working together. The brown bear Kim Taechin being controlled by them. Taeguk Shield, who wanted to become heroes. The police, who had most likely received commands from Sungshin's upper management. And finally, the reporters who were here to show the world what was happening. The picture I'd told Senya about when we whispered earlier was fitting into place exactly as I'd envisioned it. Taeguk Shield would come under my command. And through it, I would obtain every benefit there was to obtain. After a few more steps, that was well within the realm of possibility. Without standing in the fore, I would be able to secure a share of Sungshin's mighty support. Taeguk Shield, you want to have a flashy debut, right? Song Kyeol's future path would change depending on how he developed Taeguk Shield. It would determine whether he would inherit Sungshin or not. After all, Taeguk Shield was essentially hand in hand with the new tech business. But he can't do it alone. The guildmaster of Taeguk Shield, Song Kyeol, didn't realize that modern weapons wouldn't work on the Orcanthropes. From the very start, his plan to suppress the monsters with modern weapons and then have the guild make a flashy debut in front of the reporters was flawed. But it was still possible if I helped, using a playing method that was mine alone. At least in this moment, right now, only I could pull it off. The ruler of the plains was incensed by the fact I wasn't showing a hint of fear, even after so much intimidation. The ruler of the plains withdraws the final chance they gave you. Final chance? Apparently, they'd wanted to see me sniveling and begging for mercy. They still thought this stage was under their control. The ruler of the plains bears very intense hostility towards you. If I could have sent a message, I would have told them that I felt exactly the same way, and that we would see who would come out on top. With that notice, the chimera monsters, the Orcanthropes, began to move. It has begun. Chapter 88, Heroic Debut, 2. Sponsored content. Taeguk Shield's plan went awry as soon as they counted on the policemen being able to suppress the monsters. There would be no beautiful conclusion like Taeguk Shield's guild members going in to mop up the monsters after they were first quelled with modern weapons. Ah! One of the policemen firing his pistol behind the barrier of his police car door was ripped apart lengthwise. Shaw! Blood fountained out, turning the police car that was protecting the man just moments ago bright red, almost like someone had thrown several cans of red paint onto the vehicle. There was a moment of stunned silence. The Orcanthropes growling as they exhaled hot breaths were perfectly at ease. It seemed they had come to the conclusion that they were the strongest beings here. They prowled with leisure, filling their prey with fear, savoring the thrill. Kim Taechin simply huffed and puffed in place, probably on orders from the courageous Lion King. Even without moving, he cut quite an intimidating picture. He was definitely not in his right mind. I warned you. I warned them, but they didn't listen. A life was lost right in front of me. Could I have saved that policeman if I had moved more proactively? The answer was, no. I would have been arrested before I could save him. The agitated policemen might have even fired at me with their guns. They wouldn't listen to me anyway. Humans would only believe what they saw and heard with their own eyes and ears. Wop 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 wop. A large shadow, a helicopter, passed over my head. I saw a sniper aiming at the monsters in the helicopter. We were in the heart of downtown Seoul, and there were a lot of people nearby. They weren't able to use heavy weapons capable of intense firepower, so sniping was the best option. Like I said, it's no use. Even if they came with machine guns instead of sniper rifles, they wouldn't be able to do a thing to monsters above orc level. The head honcho of Taeguk Shield, Song Kyeol, was also unable to stay completely calm right now. Slightly flustered, cautious, vigilant. So sorry you couldn't make a cool entrance and finish off the mobs, I thought to myself. Turning to my party members, I said, nobody move. The policemen had completely pulled the aggro. The crack of bullets being fired was still ringing out, but they should know by now that modern weapons were ineffective. It wasn't even that they were doing chip damage, but that their bullets were being nullified altogether. If anyone does end up drawing aggro, Sunhwa, you go to the front and defend. Shout loudly to get my attention. There was no such thing as 100% perfect. The policemen armed with personal weapons were currently drawing all the aggro, but it could bounce to the players at any moment. I told them what to do if that happened. Sunhwa tilted her head. I should shout? That would draw even more aggro, and potentially capture the attention of other monsters. Her worries weren't unfounded. It was reasonable that she would question it. Sponsored content. Yeah, don't worry and shout loud enough to let me know. Got it. The perceptive Sunhwa immediately bobbed her head, and I began to slowly walk forward. Someone yelled at me. Hey, I told you not to move. It was the man who looked like the commander here, the same one who had told us to stay put earlier. He didn't have a name badge on, but I could see what his name was. Name: Park Jisok. Mr. Park Jisok, if this continues, it will be a slaughter. I have business with the Guildmaster of Taeguk Shield, Song Kyeol, over there. I intentionally mentioned Song Kyeol. Even if the commander didn't know Kim Hyukjin, he certainly knew Song Kyeol, the person who should have originally been this stage's main character. Song Kyeol, a third-generation Chaebol Scion and the Guildmaster of Taeguk Shield. He was probably racking his brains to figure out how to resolve this situation, and it went without being said that he must have seen me walking his way. A message came over the comm. Guildmaster Song Kyeol says he would like a brief meeting. I shrugged, then walked slowly towards Song Kyeol, taking the utmost care not to draw any aggro. That was the highest level of respect on comm just now. Song Kyeol was just the guildmaster of Taeguk Shield, a guild that wasn't even that famous yet. Right now, he was merely a third-generation Chaebol, and yet, the policeman stepped aside simply because Song Kyeol wanted to see me. Sungshin really is powerful. Well, it was all the same to me. Actually, the more powerful Sungshin was, the better it was for me, since I would be able to get that much more. While I was inching forward, the second victim occurred. A ripped-off arm arced through the air, rotating before landing onto the ground with a wet thud. Red blood puddled around it. Reinforcements. Requesting reinforcements. We have 2 casualties. The situation is critical. I also heard the policeman urgently requesting reinforcements. And then, I finally made it to Song Kyeol. He hadn't managed to take a position among the 8 heroes, but he was still one of the players who represented Korea, not by virtue of his personal power or skill, but by his leadership of Korea's strongest guild, Taeguk Shield. He was also known as being relatively righteous for a third-generation Chaebol heir. Many people are watching, so it looks like you can't stay out of it, Guildmaster Song Kyeol. All of the reporters had their cameras pointed at this scene. The stage had been set so that Taeguk Shield could no longer keep out of it, no matter how pyrrhic the battle would be. Of course, that stage had been set by me. It seems you have something to say to me, Song Kyeol said. I gave a warning in advance. I said that modern weapons won't work on those monsters. The policemen didn't listen or believe me. They rushed in for the sake of someone's glorious entrance. Are you picking a fight with me? Sponsored content. I am not, nor do I have any reason to do so. It wasn't my intent to make Song Kyung falter. I would turn him into the hero of this place. For all I cared, he could wear the hero cape. I would secure the actual profit. Gaahhhh. Another person screamed. AWOOOOO. One of the orcanthropes howled, which got the rest of the orc-lycanthrope hybrids sitting on their haunches to howl at the sky. A woo. A woo. Their howl seemed to sweep through the city like an emergency siren. A funeral dirge for the bloodied humans collapsed all over the place. The sound was extremely grating on the ears. The longer this goes on, the more casualties there will be. There's no knowing where the aggro will go next. The police were still attacking, and the special forces were still firing, but soon, they too would hesitate. As soon as that happened, there was no knowing who those monsters would attack next. They might even run out and attack the countless civilians in the vicinity. I won't let that happen. Once I secured the maximum profit for myself, I would prevent as many deaths as possible. That was my playing method. The whispering devil is watching gleefully. The nameless observer is observing. The Lady of the Scales is disappointed in you. Even if the Lady of the Scales was disappointed in me, it wasn't the time for me to jump in. If I were to run into that battlefield where it was hailing bullets, my life would be the first to go. Bullets didn't have eyes to distinguish between friend and foe. I will get to the point. I intend on making Guildmaster Song Kyeol into a hero. Me? If you minimize the losses here and successfully kill those monsters, you can become a hero. Along with Taeguk Shield. That was your guy's original plan, wasn't it? That was the debut Taeguk Shield wanted. Although I didn't say it out loud, Song Kyeol understood my words. However, all items and byproducts that come from the hunt will go to me and my party members. Oh, right, starting now, I will record this conversation. I need a little assurance as well. I could feel Song Kyeol's psychological state. Doubt, distrust, suspicion. Sponsored content. Well, that was only natural. He didn't know much about me. Using my special ability, I can put the monsters into a groggy state. a condition where a severe impact makes them stagger around, unable to steady themselves. It will last about 5 minutes. That should be more than enough time for you to hunt them with us. I added one more thing. If you're unable to kill them even while they're groggy, it just means that Taeguk Shield's abilities are too weak. Their weak points are the back of the neck, heart, forehead, temples. They have relatively weak defense at every spot that can be considered a weak point. You speak almost as if you have faced them yourself. I'm well informed about those monsters. I shrugged. Song Kyo stared at me. Eye of Perception detects a foreign energy. Eye of Perception detects the use of the innate ability, Eye of Truth. Was this kind of talent hereditary? President Song Kyung awakened an innate ability at only level 10, and his grandson, Song Kyo, already had an innate ability too. Seeing as how both Yu Hyun and Yunseo also had them, the innate ability awakening period for geniuses must be much sooner than the world thought. The grade of the innate ability Eye of Perception is higher than the grade of Eye of Truth. Eye of Perception completely negates the ability Eye of Truth. I grinned, smiling widely on purpose. I distinctly recall saying that I had a special power. I lowered my voice a little, wanting to surprise him a little more. Something like Eye of Truth is incapable of seeing through me. State, shock, flustered, doubt. Eye of Perception was laying his state bare before me, but the guildmaster's expression was an unperturbed poker face. He was really damn good at keeping his expressions off his face. You can say this to the reporters. Watch Taeguk Shield's hunt. Monsters that were invulnerable to modern weapons, and the heroes who would kill them. The guild members of Taeguk Shield would become those heroes. We will work to keep the aggro from going to the civilians. Are you sure they will suffer the groggy state? Even if you don't believe me, do you have any other option? Dragging this out any further was meaningless. There were definitely times when a leader had to make a quick decision. Right now was one of those times. Also, I propose $100,000 as compensation. Sponsored content. $100,000. It was neither too small nor too large an amount to pay to achieve what Taeguk Shield wanted. In my opinion, it was the perfect amount. You're very confident. You seem to be sure that I will accept your proposal. I'm sure of it, yes. He had no choice but to accept. We could run away here, and that would be that. Who would throw sticks and stones at us for running so we could live? But Taeguk Shield was different. They had the name of Sungshin attached to them and were Korea's largest guild. If they fled here, they would suffer an irrecoverable blow. Of course he will accept. My proposal wasn't terrible for Taeguk Shield. In the end, Song Kyo made his decision. How will you turn us into? He stopped mid-sentence. No, there are many things I am curious about, but I will trouble you to answer my questions later. I knew there were many unresolved doubts in his head. However, the situation was too urgent. 5 people had already died. Song Kyo was well aware that it wasn't the time to be chatting around like this. I will answer your questions one by one later. From talking to Song Kyo, I became sure of it. I might not be able to control President Song Kyung, but I could certainly keep his grandson Song Kyo in the palm of my hand. Everything was going as I predicted. If my prediction and scenario are correct, then the next place we'll meet will be the police station, huh? The scenario was steadily progressing the way I had drafted it. I would be able to bring Taeguk Shield under me like I intended. I added one more thing. Oh, right, you know that I am not alone, yes? What do you mean? It will be $100,000 per person, since we will move as a party. If you don't like that, then it can't be helped. Song Kyo would definitely accept. To him, a few $100,000 wasn't all that important right now, something I knew well. I counted down in my heart. 3, 2, 1. Sure enough. Fine, you must put them in a groggy state, without fail. He didn't look very happy. If you fail to do so, I will take it as you deceiving and insulting me. He was biting his lip a little, but to be honest, it was more cute than threatening, kind of like an elementary school kid being surly with an adult. That's fine. I got what I wanted, so now, it was time to do what he wanted. Normally, they wouldn't be capable of killing orcanthropes. If they had clashed straight on with this many orcanthropes, I would have decided without hesitation to flee. That was the way to ensure that as many of my party members would survive as possible. But it was different now. Now, I had a way forward. Now then, shall we hunt? Chapter 89. Heroic Debut, 3. I temporarily made a party with the Taeguk Shield Guild members. Everything was ready. With our strength, killing those orcanthropes without taking any losses was nearly impossible. On top of that, there was Kim Taechin. We couldn't just shoot him to death, since he was still a human. Though it was unclear why he was just standing there without attacking anyone, he would definitely start moving once we did. If we just fought him straight on, we would lose more than we would gain. However, the current me was different. I took out an item. High Orc Spell Scroll. The High Orc reigns as the upper-ranking predator of the Orc race. This scroll is imbued with the abilities of a High Orc with a special bloodline that sets it apart even from other High Orcs. This item will have an outstanding effect on Orcs, and one of 4 possible abilities can be used. Remaining uses. 1. Effects, Orcs. Spell of Super Strength. Spell of Illusion. Spell of Infatuation. Spell of Submission. I could pick one of 4 spells to use. The High Orc Spell Scroll was a gift the Whispering Devil secretly gave me, having already predicted this situation. From this alone, you can tell that the Whispering Devil is a guardian with greater power and ability than the ruler of the plains. A guardian who was almost always in the 5 limited slots for sending notices, and the item he sent me. This was the item I had relied on to draw out the current situation. What caught my eye was the Spell of Submission. Spell of Submission. Sponsored content. Using the powerful authority of the High Orc, invokes the power of forced submission on all Orcs lower in rank than the High Orc. It was time to finish up the picture I had drawn based on this item. Using the High Orc Spell Scroll. Use the Spell of Submission? I lifted the scroll into the air, knowing that at least the Guardians would be watching me. Then, I intentionally uttered the incantation in a very quiet voice that was still loud enough to be streamed to the Guardians. Spell of Submission. A powerful gravitational wave pulsed out. It wasn't visible to the eye, but my observer's eye showed me exactly how this spell unfurled. Countless invisible, vertical lines slammed down on the bodies of the Orcanthropes. Thud. One of the Orcanthropes fell to its knees, whimpering like an already defeated puppy. Some of them are resisting it. Some were resisting the spell of submission with growls, most likely because they weren't completely Orcs, but Orc-Lycanthrope hybrids. But even so, I was sure of it. None of them can escape the High Orc spell's influence. At most, they could only resist it, and only for a brief moment. Maybe a great Orc warrior Lycanthrope hybrid might be capable of shaking off the spell, but these were regular Orcs fused with regular Lycanthropes. These early level 30 monsters could never hope to be free of this power of forced submission. Observer's eye can see it. The countless vertically descending black lines only I could see were hard to put a name on. A gravitational wave? No, it felt subtly different. Can I just see it as a wave imbued with some kind of powerful force that makes them kneel? I wasn't able to analyze the true nature of this power. While I was contemplating, the guild members of Teguk's shield began to take action, slashing and piercing the kneeling or collapsed Orcanthropes at random. The spell has fully taken effect. Now, Teguk's shield could just mop them up. I watched from the side, keeping Observer's eye and Observer's domain active. The nameless observer respects your stance. The Whispering Devil feels a little regretful. Apparently, this wasn't the picture the Whispering Devil had wanted. He probably wanted me to do something like personally go out and slaughter the monsters or make some kind of big scene. Sponsored content. EXP acquired. EXP acquired. The Express was building up without me lifting a finger. Right now, I was in the level 30 period that was called the Hell phase, so my level didn't go up, but I was still getting pretty good experiment. In the meantime, many reporters filmed Teguk's shield's performance. By tomorrow, Teguk's shield will have become heroes. Teguk's shield, the guild that defeated the incredibly strong monsters that even the military and police couldn't subdue. Articles of that nature would plaster the front pages. As for Kim Tae-chan, I was amazed to see that he was still not moving. Was it simply because of a quest? He wasn't an Orc, so he shouldn't be affected by the High Orc spell scroll. Why was he just standing there? Wait. It fell off. I thought back to the black lines that had appeared by the power of the High Orc spell scroll. Those lines. They had evaded Kim Tae-chan in a strange way, almost like there was a round barrier or something around his body. No, that's not it. He didn't just block them. It was something far more intrinsic than that. He didn't just block the black lines, they weren't able to approach him altogether. They were extinguished. The scroll imbued with the High Orc's power registered on everyone here. It was just that the actual effect only triggered on Orcs. The effect didn't show up on regular humans, but the spell did affect them. Which meant, those black lines affected everyone here in the same way. But Kim Tae-chan was different. That power wasn't able to approach him altogether. A power higher in grade than the High Orc's power. Upon closer inspection, I saw a shimmer around Kim Taechun's body, like his body was giving off some kind of heat. Something was weird about it. Eye of perception perceives a strange energy. At the same time, I unknowingly groaned in pain. Goo! I clutched my right eye as it throbbed in extreme agony. There was blood on my palm and it flowed from my eye and dripped through my fingers. It can't be. I thought I could guess what this phenomenon might be. Sponsored content. Come to think of it, I didn't hear any notices from the courageous Lion King, who was deeply involved in the current situation. If he knew I was hatching this kind of scheme, he would have definitely sent messages like, "The courageous Lion King is sneering," or, "The courageous Lion King snorts at your cowardice." He's so occupied with something that he can't pay attention to me. Then there could only be one answer. It can't be. But that answer made no sense. We were only in the early game. In the early game? And from a guardian like the courageous Lion King, a pretty famous guardian in his own right? Descent. Descent. In the dictionary, it meant a god coming down from the heavens to the human world. Occasionally, some guardians would invoke a descent. It put an incredible burden on the player's body, and there was no knowing what kind of side effects they would have afterwards. There were even cases where players exploded, unable to bear the guardian's authority and power. That fucking crazy courage lover. He was borrowing Kim Taechun's body to try and invoke the power of descent. It went without being said that the current Taechun wasn't capable of safely shouldering a descent. Though I don't know how much power he's putting into this descent. I wasn't clear on what kinds of descents there were, either. Even 10 years from now, not much was known about it. In any case, Kim Taechun's done for. The courageous Lion King might be a courage-addled addict, but he wasn't a complete idiot. I was sure he would use the perfect amount of force to have a fierce battle with me. After the fierce battle, basically, once the courage lover was done with his tool, Kim Taechun would die. It might be dangerous for me, too. The situation was urgent. This was no time for me to be watching idly from the side. Using the special skill flash step, I closed in immediately, not stopping to think about the particulars. I took up position behind Taechun, who was still defenseless. There was no time to contemplate. My eyes flitted to the back of his neck, which I grabbed in a hasty choke. I squeezed his neck with all the strength I had, crouching down. From a third party's perspective, I must have looked like a cicada clinging to a tree. I didn't know how much time passed like that, maybe a few seconds. It was just that urgent. Thud. Kim Taechun's body slumped to the ground. The strange sensation surrounding him, the shimmering aura I had felt through Observer's eye, disappeared. What would be a good way to describe it? God energy, maybe? The nameless observer continues observing. The true master of the heavenly demonic mountain is impressed by your quick judgment. The Lady of the Scales denounces the courageous Lion King. Sponsored content. Seeing as our just lady was publicly denouncing him, it seemed the courage lover really was trying to invoke descent. He's well and properly nuts, trying to pull a descent on a beginner player's body. But if you considered it another way, it also means that I've stimulated him so intensely that he couldn't resist the overwhelming itch. That was another possible interpretation. I had given him so much stimulus and fun that the courage lover charged straight in, consequences be damned. So much fun that he completely flipped his lid. Nice. Of course, this incident would become famous among the Guardians, and that would definitely work out in my favor. Having already finished off the Orcanthropes, Song Keol approached me, eyeing the unconscious Kim Taechun. We're nearly finished here. Did you PvP just now? Let's settle the payment next time, I responded. I'm a little busy right now. I will answer your questions soon. That would probably happen at the place I was predicting, the police station. For now, we'll get out of here. In order to bring the picture I'd been drawing to its completion, it was best to step aside for now. Taeguk Shield would take care of the rest. We will soon meet again. I wasn't sure how soon, but if my guess was correct, it would be very soon. However, I continued talking like I didn't know. I think it would be best for me to step aside so you can sort things out over here. As if he had wanted that in the first place, Song Keol nodded immediately. Understood. I will get in contact with you. I quickly left the place that had come within an inch of becoming the site of a guardian descent. No matter how I thought about it, the courageous Lion King was seriously insane, considering he tried to use a descent that even high-level players had a hard time handling. Let's call it quits for the day, I told my party members. This was enough for today's playing. Too much had happened in one go. I was also very tired from my continuous use of Eye of Perception and Observer's Eye. Both my ability to concentrate and my stamina were exhausted. Oppa, are you alright? Boss Hyukjin, is your eye alright? Who did that to you? Youngnim. Hung, are you alright? Goddammit, just tell me who it was, and I'll burn 'em down. I calmed down my overreacting party members. An injury of this level would go away with a cure potion. Get some rest, I'll contact you soon, so see you then. Sponsored content. Everyone seemed tired. Yunseo said, there's a lot I want to ask our boss Hyukjin. She still looked worried, but I'll ask you later. Boss Hyukjin, take care of yourself. Get well soon. When your eye's better, let's go get a meal together. Her use of the possessive when referring to me slightly bothered me somehow, but I didn't comment on it and watched as she waved goodbye. Yoo-hyun and Sung Ji-yu also left, leaving just me, Sunhwa, and Sung-hyun. Sunhwa and I are gonna go by taxi. Alright, Hung. My house happens to be in the same direction. Sunhwa was so tired that she was dozing off on her feet. Her sense of tension had left her, leaving her deflated. This little sister of mine had a real talent for sleeping on her feet. My bleeding eye was throbbing, but it didn't bother me too much. I glanced at Sung-hyun. He certainly had something to say to me. He was probably still debating whether he should say it or not. I decided to wait for him, since it wasn't a pressing issue. The taxi came. The moment Sunhwa and I were about to get in, Sung-hyun spoke up. Hung, I have something to tell you. After apologizing to the taxi driver, I closed the car door and turned around to face Sung-hyun. I was waiting. What? In the beginning, when we came down to the first floor and left the building and I was walking slowly, I said, I'm waiting for something. What I had been waiting for wasn't the Orcanthropes or my plan involving Taeguk Shield. I had been waiting for Jo Sung-hyun to speak up. He blinked, staring at me. Then, he said, so you were saying that about me? Yeah, that's right. If I am not mistaken, it seems you already know what I am about to say. Of course I did. I just didn't know if he was going to bring it up today, or later. I gave him a light nod, looking at him. Judging from his inability to hide his shocked expression, he seemed pretty darn surprised. Want me to guess what you're going to say? You're 10 years too young to get the jump on me, kid. Chapter 90. Sponsored content. I was waiting. When he heard those words, Sung-hyun felt his heart drop. Want me to guess what you're going to say? He wasn't guilty of anything, but it felt like he was, like he did something wrong to his lifelong savior. Like, he was too late. No, I will say it. I apologize for being late. Hyukjin shrugged and smiled, then patted Sung-hyun on the shoulder. Not at all. Hyukjin didn't think Sung-hyun was late at all. In fact, he thought it was rather fast. He had always known what Sung-hyun's disposition and personality were like. The lad didn't need to feel like he did something wrong or feel guilty just because he didn't say it right away. It's not like you have an obligation to tell me. Hyukjin fully discerned Sung-hyun's feelings, almost like a mind reader. You have no obligation to tell me what you got there. If you were to feel any obligation, it would be because I'm your benefactor. Hyukjin had given him the incredible artifact that was the Venti Body Tome, and even lent him the Wind Shoes +1. He protected him from the Big Mouth Lizard and the Ghost's attack. To Jo Sung-hyun, Hyukjin was most definitely his benefactor. But it's okay, you can repay the debt you owe me at your own discretion. You're not obligated to share and tell me everything. It's good to differentiate the cards in your hand from favors you owe. Because it's not like you're repaying a favor by revealing every card in your hand. Sung-hyun nodded. Okay, thank you for the lesson. In his mind, he was wondering, just how old is this Hung? He thought Hyukjin was 20, but he seemed at least 10 years older in mental maturity. Sung-hyun didn't think there were many proper adults out there in the world, but he got the feeling that he was facing a real adult when talking to Kim Hyukjin. I want to tell you. I think that will make me feel most at ease. I also nodded. There was no need to refuse when Sung-hyun wanted to say it. As you know, when I destroyed the clear crystal, it felt like that crystal was being absorbed into my body. I know. I'd seen it myself, which was why I was curious about it. There was a notice saying the clear crystal's energy melted into my life, and if I satisfied a certain condition, I could activate the Wind Temple. Sponsored content. Wind Temple? I already knew where the Wind Temple would activate, in the Hill of Wind dungeon that would spawn on Jeoye Island in Jeonnam, quite a distance away from Seoul. Only, I didn't know the particulars about the dungeon. It was known as a dungeon that the typhoon Jo Sung-hyun cleared on his own. Was that Wind Temple the same as the Wind Temple being discussed now? I couldn't be sure, and that was because Sung-hyun and I cleared the Tomb of the Great Orc Warrior, a place that hadn't existed in the past. The clear crystal of that flashgate had given Sung-hyun this opportunity. When did the past Sung Hyun get this opportunity? Back then, the herdsmen of Las Vegas wouldn't have proposed a gamble. And there hadn't been a blue light candle then, either. The process was a little different, so it might have been that Sung Hyun was originally supposed to have gotten this opportunity later. I didn't know when the past Sung Hyun got this opportunity, but the general flow of events seemed to be going in a similar direction as the past. It was just that the timing was different. Sung Hyun continued, I don't know any details yet either. I glanced sideways at Senya. It looked like she was still streaming. Should I throw out some bait? Appealing hints that could put guardians on pins and needles were called bait, aka foreshadowing. Some players and streamers were skilled at using such bait to fire up the guardians. Even if you only make good on 7 out of 10 baits thrown, it'll be a jackpot. That was a publicly known fact. If none of your baits became relevant, you would be cussed out, but there was no need to make good on every single one you threw. The guardians would go crazy even if only 7 out of 10 hit the mark. By any chance, if you get a condition for a dungeon you have to clear alone, let me know. I think I'll be able to give you some advice. Sung Hyun's eyes quivered. State, very shocked. My eye of perception, a skill capable of seeing various representative emotions, showed that Sung Hyun was only feeling very shocked right now. It meant he was just that surprised. Hung. What? Sung Hyun pulled up his sleeves and showed me his arms. I have goosebumps right now. How come? I heard a notice just now. A notice saying that I've just satisfied one of the clear crystal's conditions. Even I was flabbergasted. Out of nowhere? Just what kind of condition did he satisfy? Sponsored content. Apparently, this energy is embedded and fused into my body, so it's linked to my cognitive system. So basically, as soon as I thought of the keywords, dungeon you have to clear alone, the condition was satisfied. Those keywords were the condition, hung. Is that so? I acted unperturbed, but I was just as shocked. I just casually said a sentence, and that in itself became a hint. Was it really okay for something like that to happen? You only said one thing. How is this possible? That was exactly what I wanted to know. I was surprised, too, but I kept feigning calmness. It must be because you have a sovereign class, hung. No, I didn't think my class had much to do with this. Sung Hyun looked very excited, which was unusual for the usually quiet boy. He was talking faster. New information was unlocked. It looks like an item called Foxtail is the key. Foxtail. It was an item I had already possessed before. Back in the dungeon the Giant of the Sunset crafted with all his power to raise his all-time favorite player Choi Sung-ji-yu. I used the Foxtail in the Valley of Fire. Foxtail was the clear item? From that, I could infer something significant. When the serial murders happened near Mount Inwang in the past. In the past, the government covered up those grotesque murders, and in the end, the man arrested as the suspect for the serial murders even committed suicide. This time, I successfully hunted the six-tailed fox, which prevented the serial murders from ever happening. This time, I hunted it. But what about in the past? I think Sung Hyun must have killed it. When that occurred to me, it felt like the somewhat hazy pieces of the past became more clear. The past Sung Hyun didn't publicize the unlocked conditions for the Wind Temple. It was a dungeon he cleared alone, so there hadn't been much reason for him to reveal the unlocked conditions. However, Jo Sung Hyun valued impartiality and justice. When it came to information that he didn't necessarily have to publicize, but could, he would choose 9 times out of 10 to publicize it on the off chance it might help others even a little bit. The foxtail he got back then, and the six-tailed fox that dropped it. He wasn't able to reveal his acquisition of the foxtail from the six-tailed fox, because the government had covered up the very existence of the six-tailed fox. It was possible that the Jo Sung Hyun of that time realized that the true culprit of the serial murders going on at the time was the six-tailed fox. If he did, he must have felt an incredible amount of guilt. With his personality, he must have felt stuck between a rock and a hard place, with a heavy sense of guilt weighing down on him. He must have really wanted to reveal the truth about the wrongly accused man's unfair death. No wonder he hardly ever mentioned the Wind Temple. If I hadn't regressed and more time passed. Sponsored content. If the typhoon grew stronger, and his desire to reveal the truth grew, would he have exposed the truth? Would he have told the world that the government and police back then fabricated the incident and unfairly robbed a person of his precious life? He might have, yes. I didn't know, but from what I had seen of Jo Sung Hyun, I thought it was very possible. But there was a Korean saying like this: you can sound water 10 fathoms deep, but the human heart is unfathomable. It didn't happen in this life, and it won't happen in the future, either. In this timeline, Sung-hyun would be able to play with a slightly less burdened heart. He had no idea, but I had inadvertently freed him of one of his lifelong sources of guilt. I smiled broadly. Is it too grandiose to say that I'm correcting the past? It might be. I was just lucky. Foxtail is dropped by a spirit-type monster called Six-Tailed Fox. Its level is in the late 20s. It wasn't a commonly appearing monster at this point in time. But later, the day would come when he would find a six-tailed fox. It wouldn't be that hard. As long as you watch out for its doppelganger technique and talent in running away, it shouldn't be all that difficult to hunt. Have you already killed one before? Yeah, near Mount Inwang. Come to think of it, I also inadvertently saved Yunzio's mom at that time. I saved Yunzio's mom and also helped Sung-hyun. It felt like my return to the past was having a good influence on the people around me. But it probably won't appear near Mount Inwang again. Why not? It's an extremely shrewd monster, so it won't appear where another of its kind showed up before, much less a place where one was killed. Thank you for the information. After thanking me, Sung-hyun made up his mind. I want to become a person like you who can share that kind of information to others. That so? That reminded me, the Typhoon Joe Sung-hyun, and the Great Explorer Jackson, were known to be pretty close friends. I've really felt and learned a lot from you. It was a little embarrassing, but I simply nodded, knowing that his feelings were sincere. I will work hard to become someone like you, Hung. Sponsored content. Inside the taxi, Sunhwa went from dozing on her feet to dozing in the car. She was snoozing with her head on my shoulder, and I was amazed she could sleep so deeply even inside a lurching car. She was so fully out of it that she probably wouldn't even notice if someone carried her off. It does feel like the pieces of the past are a bit weird. The covering up of the Mount Inwang serial murders, the existence of Sungshin's team leader Kim Kongchul, and Jo Sung-hyun, who hadn't been able to tell the truth. Something off. It was just my feeling. I couldn't put a finger on what exactly it was, but it felt like there was a big mistake in my understanding of something in the past. Though I have the feeling that I'll find out more as my playing progresses. By this point, I trusted my gut, my intuition. There was definitely something in the past, something I wasn't getting. We're here. We made it back home. The taxi stopped at the entrance to the complex, not going all the way into the parking lot. I'm sleepy, Oppa. Sunhwa seemed as sleepy as ever. She was clutching the hem of my clothes as she trailed behind me like a zombie, unable to keep her eyes open. You're walking like a zombie. I'm not a zombie, yawn. Yawning widely, Sunhwa mumbled something like, zombies look scary. I don't look scary, while trudging behind me. Huh. I instantly got a feeling that something was weird. I focused my mind, then stopped in place, turning around to put my hands on Sunhwa's shoulders. I peered into her eyes. She was still half awake, unable to open her eyes fully. No matter how tired she is. From my experience of playing so far, this level of odd behavior should have been obvious. But I didn't notice it, and eye of perception didn't catch it, either. If I was right, I was under the influence of that. But at least I knew now. Thankfully, I noticed it relatively quickly. Staring into Sunhwa's eyes, I asked, "Who are you?" At that moment, Sunhwa's body started to tremble uncontrollably, convulsing bizarrely.